This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Israel's renewed its attacks on southern Lebanon, killing at least 12 people, threatening to further unravel Israel's truce with Hezbollah. With the latest attacks, the UN says Israel's committed more than 100 ceasefire violations since agreeing to a ceasefire last week. Meanwhile, Israel's continued its unrelenting assault on Gaza, with attacks on the northern town of Beit Lahia today that killed at least 8 people. 20 others are wounded. In Gaza City, dozens of civilians are feared trapped under the rubble of a 4-story building leveled by an Israeli airstrike. On Monday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called the situation in Gaza appalling and apocalyptic and said Israel may be guilty of the gravest international crimes. We're joined now by the Israeli journalist and activist Haggai Matar. He's an executive director of Plus 972 magazine and conscientious objector who refused to serve in the Israeli army. He has a new piece in The Nation out today for those who know they have not done enough to stop Israel's war on Gaza. It's nice to have you in studio. We usually speak to you in Tel Aviv, Haggai.
It's good to be here.
So elaborate on that title in The Nation, the piece that you just wrote, for those who do not feel they've done enough.
Sure, Amy. So first, it started from Yom Kippur reflection of myself, of why have I not done enough? I've been running 972, co-directing Local Call in Hebrew, trying to fight for the rights of Palestinians and push back against the horrific acts of massacre and ethnic cleansing my country's been committing in Gaza. And yet it feels like it's just not enough. And why have we not done enough? What could we possibly do more? So it started with a very personal reflection, trying to analyze the reasons of not doing enough, and then saying, well, we have to commit, we have to double down. And especially now with the upcoming Trump presidency, I think this is also a call to Americans saying, your government is clearly not going to get any better at this in the near future. We need people on the ground mobilizing and taking action, supporting BDS, trying to move the needle and pressuring Israel into ending these atrocities.
And Haggai, I wanted to ask you about the International Criminal Court's historic decision to indict Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and the former Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. In a statement, the ICC said that the Israeli leaders had, quote, intentionally and knowingly deprived the civilian population in Gaza of objects indispensable to their survival. How was this news received within Israel? And do you think it will have, in the long term, a major impact on Netanyahu and the policies of his government?
Well, thank you, Juan. One of the most heartbreaking realities of the situation is that Israelis don't get the news that everyone else in the world is getting. The images from Beit Lahia and from Jabalia, the just atrocities we're seeing there, the death, the destruction, the starvation, that is not being shown on Israeli television, Israeli newspapers. And therefore, when something like this comes out, a decision from the ICC, basically their response from wall to wall, we're talking about the entire Zionist politics, so that's about 110 out of 120 members of the Knesset, are just saying this is an anti-Semitic court, this is anti-Semitic media, like everyone is anti-Semitic. And of course, just offering complete support to Netanyahu, even the people who hate him the most. An exception to that has been, in recent days, Moshe Bogi Ya'alon, a former chief of staff, was actually the chief of staff that sent me to 2 years in prison for his war crimes, now saying, yes, these warrants are justified. The Prime Minister...
I want to go to that for 1 minute. The clip of the former defense minister, Moshe Ya'alon, accusing Israel of ethnic cleansing and committing war crimes in Gaza. Again, served as the defense minister of Netanyahu from 2013 to 16. Made the accusations over the weekend in main television interviews on Channel 12, for example, one of Israel's biggest TV channels.
To occupy, to annex, to cleanse ethnic cleansing. Look at the northern Gaza Strip and settle a Jewish settlement. That's the point. There is no Beit Lahia. There is no Beit Hanon. They are operating in Jabalia and are essentially clearing the area of Arabs.
So that's a main Israeli channel, not actually Channel 12, Israel's former defense minister, Moshe Ya'alon. Haggai Matar, does he speak to the Israeli public and explain more the significance of who he is?
So Ya'alon was the chief of staff in the second Intifada. That's when I refused the draft because of his war crimes. We were at the time chanting at him, "One day we'll see you at The Hague." We never imagined it would be as a witness for the prosecution. To suddenly see him talking about the same sort of actions that he was doing, but clearly much, much worse right now, the ethnic cleansing, the starvation that he's enforcing is absolutely incredible. He's doing it as part of his attempt to fight against the Netanyahu drive for authoritarianism. So he's been very active in the kind of so-called Israeli protest for democracy, even before the war in Gaza. That has been his policy. I think he connects the dots, as one should, between the attack on democratic institutions inside of Israel and the ethnic cleansing and massacre and war crimes against Palestinians. However, unfortunately, in interviews where he's been going on Israeli television, basically from wall to wall, journalists have been saying, "Are you mad? You're just endangering our soldiers. What are you talking about? There's no war crimes." So because viewers don't have the context of what has actually been happening, he just sounds like a madman to many people. But I do think it does cause some people pause to think, why would someone with his credentials make such serious accusations?
Haggai, you asked if people are doing enough. I want to break into this conversation with this breaking news. In Canada, about 150 Jewish activists and allies have just launched a protest inside the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa to demand Canada stop arming Israel. We're joined now by Rachel Small, a member of the group Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition. Rachel, can you describe where you are and what you're doing and what you're calling for?
Thank you. We are in a Parliament Hill building right now. We have completely taken over the lobby of this building that has hundreds of parliamentarians' office in here. Our demand is clear. Canada needs to stop arming Israel and implement an immediate arms embargo. We know that every F-35 fighter jet, every Boeing Apache helicopter dropping bombs on Lebanon, on Gaza right now is full of hundreds of Canadian components. We're here as Jews to say this violence cannot continue in our name. And we're here as people of conscience to say that the absolute bare minimum Canada needs to be doing right now is stop arming a genocide.
All who hold onto it in strength will rise.
Haggai Matar, your response to this kinds of actions occurring abroad, does this have an impact on the Israeli public?
Well, first of all, I want to commend the activists on the ground now in Ottawa. It's incredible. This is the exact kind of protest that people should be taking on in Canada, definitely in the US, which is the biggest supplier of weapons and funding and diplomatic support to Israel. So yes, this is what we should be seeing more of. I'm afraid that in Israel, again, these protests are usually seen as anti-Semitic, or in the case of Jews protesting, so self-hating Jews or people that are, unhinged. That's the way it's being perceived. It's our job as Jewish Israelis on the ground, talking in Hebrew, talking to people in our communities, to try and help them understand that it's not the world that's gone mad, it's us.
Interesting that the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, just met with President-elect Trump in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Rachel Small, we're looking at the group of people. One of them, I think, says Jews for Free Palestine. What has been Trudeau's position, and what's going to happen to you this morning?
We have seen an unprecedented wave of resistance across Canada over the past 13 months. Many, many thousands of people across the country, not only petitioning their MPs, not only protesting, not only meeting with them, but actually holding blockades and weapons factories, doing literally everything they can to get Canada to stop arming Israel. And that pressure has resulted in the Canadian government taking a stance that we would have not thought possible a year or two ago. They have committed to stop arming Israel. They have, in fact, the Foreign Affairs Minister recently, in fact, said that Canadian weapons are not going to be going and used in Gaza. Unfortunately, it's not true. Unfortunately, we know that they have not canceled all the permits, and they have continued to conveniently send weapons to the U.S. without even requiring a permit. Those are going into every F-35 Israel is using. That is going into Israel's primary weapons of war. So we have backed the Canadian government into a corner where they know what the right stance is. They know they need to stop arming Israel, and we're here to make sure they do it. The broad Arms Embargo Now coalition has come together across the country and has in fact gotten 45 parliamentarians to formally endorse the call for an arms embargo. We just need the government to step up and take that action to actually cut off the flow of all weapons to and from Israel. It's the bare minimum they need to be doing.
That's Rachel Small, member of Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition. If you're having a little trouble understanding her, she's inside the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa. There are scores of people behind her. Lead Canadian organizer with with the group World Beyond War. And in the studio with us in New York, though usually in Tel Aviv, is Haggai Matar, Israeli journalist, activist, executive director of 972 magazine, a conscientious objector himself. Juan?
Haggai, we only have about a minute left, but I wanted to ask you about the President-elect Trump's decision to select former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee as the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. Huckabee is not only a leading U.S. Christian Zionist who's openly advocated for Israel's annexation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, he declared in 2008 that there's really no such thing as a Palestinian. What do you expect from this kind of ambassador from the new Trump administration?
So obviously Trump appointments and Trump policies are terrifying to us and should be to anyone who cares about the rights of Palestinians. I do want to also point out, however, Trump policies have an inherent contradiction. As an isolationist, Trump does not want to get involved in too many wars. As someone who wants to break deals with Saudi Arabia and Arab Gulf states, he may want to ensure that they don't drift into the Iran-China field of influence. And those two policies, being pro-annexation and pro-settlements and pro-Israel, and being pro-war and wanting to sign deals, they collide. And I think it's our role on the left to kind of put a wedge in there and try and make sure that it becomes more and more apparent how those policies conflict with each other.
Haggai Matar, I want to thank you so much for being with us. Israeli journalist, activist, executive director of Plus 972 magazine, former conscientious objector, refused to serve in the Israeli army. That does it for our show. Happy birthday to Emily Goslin. Democracy Now! Produced with Mike Burke, Renee Feltz, Dina Guzder, Messiah Rhodes, Nermeen Sheikh, Maria Tarasena, Tammy Warrenoff, Tarina Nadura, Sam Alkoff, Tamaria Studio, John Hamilton, Rabbi Karen, Hani Massoud, Hannah Elias, Dennis Moynihan, our executive director, Julie Crosby. Special thanks to Becca Staley, John Randolph. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.